I love myself a good rule of thumb. It's really an indication of how I should be doing things. Especially when I started off improving my finances and taking things a bit more serious, I really followed a lot of those rules that people said, these are the golden rules you should be following. And there are really some great indications out there, especially for real beginners. This is very good. But I also always say any rule is there to be broken. And in this video, I want to talk to you about one of those very popular rules, which is the 50-30-20 rule, the new version of it, and then finally come to the version that I follow and recommend for most people. So let's kick things off with the 50-30-20 rule, which was a rule that has been really around for many years. And basically it's split in 3 parts. Now, the first 50% of your income, salary, whatever it may be, the money that comes into your account will be allocated towards the needs, right? The everyday living expenses, such as the rent or the mortgage payments you have to make, the car payments if you happen to have a car, any groceries, insurance and healthcare, minimum debt payments in case you have a loan or maybe student debt, right? And of course, utilities. These are the things you need to pay. By skipping on any of those, okay, maybe the car payments if you don't have a car, but the rest is essential, right? You need groceries to live. You better want to have a health insurance to make sure you can be looked after by doctors in case something happens. And of course, you got to have a place to live somewhere. So these are real essentials. And of course, 50% is a high number, but at the same time, that's often the reality. Now, sure, you can reduce each of those lines individually. You could be sharing an apartment with 4 other people and have a little room to save that cost on the rent. Of course, let's assume you want to have a nice quality life, so you want to be spending a little bit on those. 50% is quite a big chunk, but that should be covering all of your needs. Now then, the other 30% of your income can be spent on wants, right? So these are things that you don't need essentially to have in your life, but they make your life so much better, right? For example, instead of cooking, you opt to going out, right? And go to a nice restaurant. Of course, having a thing like a gym, even though for me, a gym really is a need because that's an investment into my health. For some people, that might be seen like a want, right? Or for example, going to a massage, right? It's not something you really need in your life, but having it definitely does feel nice. Even things like Netflix, right? It's not a need, but it's nice to have for some people, right? Tickets to sporting events, you get the drift. The things you would like to have, but don't necessarily need. You could cut out on pretty much all of them and reduce it to 0. But once again, you want to have a quality of life. You work hard for your money, so you obviously also want to enjoy the life a little bit. So I think it's really fair and valid to have a wants category in your budget. And you don't have to be a math genius to figure out that there is a remaining 20%, and that's historically been allocated towards savings. Now, back in the days, they always called it savings, even though in my eyes, it's really more investing into your future, right? But one thing, of course, that I'm also a fan of is having an emergency fund. So in that way, yes, that is a bit of saving, but once that's established, that will take you a few months to establish, 3 to 6 months of your monthly living expenses in a high yielding savings account, set aside for any emergency you might be facing. But then the rest of it, I would strongly recommend to really invest and not keep on saving, because saving your money, having it at the bank, it will basically lose value due to inflation. So you want to be investing it over time and growing it over time. That's so important. That's investing into your personal future, growing your net worth and benefiting from compounding interest. Now, essentially, I really like that rule. It's a good, solid rule of thumb to give you an indication of what you should be doing with your money, right? Because some people, they just earn their money and then just spend whatever they earn and then worry about investing many years down the road when it's often too late, right? I mean, it's never too late to invest, but obviously starting with 20 is way better than if you were to start with 50, because time can be your best friend or your worst enemy. So want to start early. And following such a principle is not a bad start. Now, obviously having those rules is really hard because it's so different for every single person, right? I mean, if you're making $200,000 a year, then obviously you might have different figures that you have available, for example, to invest, rather than somebody who just graduated from college, has their first job and earns significantly less, but for example, doesn't want to make too many sacrifices on their rent, the way they're living, right? They still want to have a sort of decent place, at least not to share with anyone. Then obviously the percentage they pay on their rent might be higher than a really wealthy person who has a lot of disposable income, who still obviously has a nicer apartment, but as a percentage, it might be less than a person out of college. So as always, it's really hard to generalize these rules, but as a rule of thumb, to give you an indication, I quite like it. However, recently, that rule has been a little bit under pressure, and that's because of the dreaded inflation. You see this over here, symbolized by the average cost for a cup of coffee increasing over time, and that just shows you that the value of money becomes less valuable over time, because governments keep on printing money, so each note is worth less, so over time you need more money to buy the same thing. That's basically the impact of inflation. And that's why recently a new new percentage seems to have emerged, which is the 60-30-10 rule. And that just shows you that people actually recommend to allocate more money towards your needs and wants because they're becoming so much more expensive, obviously due to inflation, which of course by itself doesn't seem so bad. However, this comes at a big sacrifice, meaning that now your saving or investing rate will only be 10% of your salary, which honestly, in my opinion, is way too little. Irrespective of how much you earn, I think only allocating 10% of that into your future investments to grow it over time, I think is really going to hold you back. Now, any amount is a great start, right? To start investing, because some people are scared that only investing, let's say $50 or euros a month will be too little. And honestly, that couldn't be further from the truth. The most important thing is to get started. So any amount works for you, but the idea is to grow that over time. And if you make $100,000 or euros after taxes and you only invest 100 euros, let's say a month, then I'm sorry, that is really way too little. And you're really losing out on growing your wealth exponentially over time. And that's why I'm a fan of the 60-20-20 rule. So yes, a little bit overwhelming, all these different percentages, but don't be afraid. Basically, why I like this rule is that you can account for a higher cost of living, which is a reality, right? Mortgages, rents have all gone up, and hopefully it won't stay like this forever as interest rates start coming down. That hopefully will adjust a little bit, but the reality is inflation is real and things are getting more expensive. So I think the 60% is actually reasonable to account for the increase in living expenses. That's something that's affecting all of us. However, as I'm such a proponent of investing more into your future, I don't like the 10%, and that's why I would definitely double it to at least 20%. If you can do more, even better. But I think having at least 20% allocated towards your savings or investments, even better. So that's a combination of your emergency fund and your investments into ETFs, crypto, real estate, whatever you do, right? It's really up to you. But I think that's super, super important to have at least 20% here. But that also means that you have to cut down on your wants, so to say, or here it's called anything, right? All your random expenses that you didn't really budget for, but you really enjoy the kind of finer things in life sometimes, a nice holiday that you feel to go to, or a wild night out with your friends, right? These things happen and we're all human, we want to enjoy. But at the same time, while things that are out of your control, like the living expenses getting more expenses, well, you have to make some sacrifices somewhere, and that comes out of your wants category. So if you reduce that to only 20%, so doing that, you're giving investing the same importance as your wants. And I think that's really important. It just shows you really take it serious. And obviously doubling your rate of investing, that will really show major differences over time. So let's assume you earn $5,000 a month, which, again, depending where you live, might be a normal salary. In Switzerland, it's almost minimum salary these days. In other parts of the world, this might seem like a lot of money, but you get the principle, right? Whatever is your amount, let's say it's $5,000 in this example, 10% of that would be $500 that you contribute towards your investments, right? So initial deposit would be $1,000. You add $500 every single month. It's monthly, basically. You grow it over 30 years at an estimated rate of return of 8%, which is on the conservative end. If you invest into the S&P 500, for example, it returned for the last 30 years anywhere between 8 to 10%. So let's go with 8%, and you would be ending up with a balance of $756,000. So really not too shabby, still less than $1 million, but definitely a nice number just by adding $500 every single month into your investment, in this case S&P 500, which also happens to be my preferred investment vehicle. Now that will be as per the 60-30-10 rule. However, as I said, at least I really recommend to invest 20% of your income. In this case, it would double to $1,000. And you see already a huge difference. It's twice the return, 1.5 million. So a major, major difference just by doubling the percentage that you save from 10 to 20%, right? So you can see if you continue to increase that to 30%, it will be even higher. And that's why I really urge you to try to maximize the amount of money you can allocate towards investments. Now, as I said at the beginning of the video, any rule is there to be broken, right? But I think it gives you a good indication. And that's why I think 60-20-20 in this day and age is really a reasonable number for most people to get started. When you look at your budget and allocate how much money you can spend on what, that accounts for the increase in the cost of living, which is a real thing, right? We can't get around it. But at the same time, it still prioritizes investing and puts it at least on the same level as the money you spend on all the current things you want, you enjoy in your life, which is normal, right? We're all humans, we want them. But at the same time, you want to be investing into your personal future. Now, if you're 60 or older and you already invested all the money into your investments and now only living off it, now then clearly this number, once again, might be different for you. You might choose to allocate less into into your investments and more into your ones, because maybe it's your final few years on this world, right? So obviously you want to enjoy and live life more a little bit. So that's why I'm always saying it's so hard to generalize these rules. It's just here as an indication for you. I'm a big fan of measuring things. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So that's why I complete myself every single month my monthly budget and net worth tracker. Here I really go through and input all the money I'm making, all the things I spend on, and of course, all the various assets I have in my bank, in my investments, in my real estate, to really add them up and see my net worth hopefully grow over time. And by doing that, I can also very easily see here my savings rate, my spendings rate, and then obviously my investments rate as a balance, right? Having those three numbers really clearly in front of me, I can see where I'm doing well, where I'm not doing well, where I need to improve, right? Even if 1 month I'm out of this rule and I spent too much money on my ones because I bought something special or went on a nice holiday, that's totally fine. But if I keep on doing this month after month after month, then obviously my investments will take a hit and I will be falling off my goals and targets. So that's why I think it's so important to really track it. So if you do fall off 1 month, you can correct it another month and then maybe save a little bit more on your ones and then allocate more money into your investments. That way you stay on target to grow your net worth over time. And this is not just a number that you look at and feel great about yourself, but having a higher net worth, that allows you to have more capital. And once again, more capital will work in your favor and grow even more over time. That will then allow you to reach financial freedom, which I guess is a goal we all have, to really be living a life where you decide what you do with your time and work not because you have to, but because you want to, you have a passion for it, and the financial part is already taken care of. It's nothing for you to worry about. You have enough money to live off comfortably, withdrawing it while it continues growing for you over time. And as a little bonus, I made this sheet available for you free of charge. Just use the link down in the description below. You can download my net worth tracker and start measuring your net worth and your monthly spendings. But I'm very interested to hear from you. What kind of percentage are you currently following? Is it 60, 30, 10, 50, 30, 20? Let me know down in the comments below. Next up, check out this video over here. As always, thanks a lot for watching. Stay healthy, get wealthy, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.